Hello, this is DigiDM with a time lapse and audio tutorial for how I made the ruined stone dungeon or ruined prison dungeon for the Baileywiki 3D community of March 2026 release. So here I'm just looking for inspiration. I just Googled some keywords, found some dungeon interiors that I liked, and just saved those images. And then I'm setting up the scene. So I have all the March assets out on a blank scene, and am just setting up a basic scene. So getting the dungeon tiles out there and trying to get some sense of size and perspective by throwing that actor out there. So as you see that I shrunk it down and wanted it to be something a little bit more manageable than the default. I know that I'm going to make something that's very dungeon-esque, so I got rid of all these sandstone texture pieces, and since it's an interior scene, I don't plan on using any of the straw roofs. And I keep things pretty bright when I'm building. I do lighting towards the end here. And I'm just separating out some of the animated assets I have. And this build is a little different than I normally do, in that I normally use a 2D map that I then build the 3D scene from. But this situation is different. I actually am just sort of making it up based on those images. So there's some concept of these archway prison cells, but really I don't have much to go from. This is me just making it up as I go. I had imagined a sort of balcony walkway, as in some modern prisons, that there's a spot where prison guards can come out and sort of see all the cells. And then, of course, utilizing the columns that come with the asset pack. And then getting that basic floor system set up so that way everything can get lifted to a proper floor depth. I'm exploring all the different gate options here. And this is where I got a little sidetracked. So I like this animated floor grate, except it didn't match with the rest of the tiles. So I end up going into Blender and I grab that asset with the hole, and I just end up basically replacing and sort of editing the animation to fit my needs. I kept the grate the same, just a rusty sort of grate. And rather than just lifting up and over like that, I wanted it to be a little more realistic and do sort of a lifting into the hole. You'll see me sizing that up with the stone floor here. So probably a lot more work than most people need to do, but I like animating things and I like things to fit together, so this felt like an appropriate use of my time. Plus, it's what I do in the 3D animations modules. I make animated assets, so I felt comfortable spending some time making that. And here I am just replacing the asset and changing it to a door, so that way it all matches and fits my need. So this is where I'm thinking of multi-level. So one of the main intentions of a 3D environment is to make use of levels and height. And at first I was imagining sort of 2 stories like this, but you'll see later that I end up taking out the middle, so it's a little bit more of an open concept. I like the grate concept, and so I put that into every room. Just sizing it up here to match the floor as best as possible. This took quite a bit of finagling to get the windows and walls and archways to look decent. I bring in my actor there to make sure it's sized appropriately. And then some of this is just sizing and finagling to make sure things look good. I do spend a lot of time on my maps making sure things aren't Z-fighting, which is when you get that flicker effect. And so even that wall I spent too much time on and ultimately ended up replacing it. So now I'm putting in these archway gates, and then I'm using the square one for the window, but I sized it up because I really like the look of it being a little bit wider of a gap. I'm just copying those over and finishing my floor grate. This is where I decided I didn't want it blocked off. Now it's not exactly even. I'm checking my inspiration photos again, which is fine. It doesn't need to be symmetrical. And there's a point where it kind of feels like too big of a change to make it symmetrical. So you'll see I look at various stairs and try to match the look. Ultimately, I don't go with these ones, but found a stair set that's not part of the asset pack and just changed the material coloring to be a little bit darker, maybe a little bit more purplish to match the set. Which isn't perfect, but looks pretty good. But ultimately, I changed these stairs out later. So I have my basic sort of prison cell structure, which is helpful that I can copy it over, but I had an issue with that gap in the arches. I could have edited the arch top to make it fit better, but ultimately I decided that this wasn't going to be a nice structure where everything was put together, but instead a ruined prison, which gives me a lot of wiggle room for broken pieces and some of the assets that came with the pack. Bricks that are falling apart, and some of the assets I animated, like the archways collapsing. Really like these fences. I was looking for a guardrail, and some of them are just too clean. And so went with these more orcish looking fences. And this is where I decided to change the stairway to circular stairway. Just trying to match the color as best I can there. Building out the columns at the base. Obviously something needs to hold up the floor. And I think at this point I'm probably feeling like I've spent too much time on this, so I start moving maybe a little quicker to block out the scene and to get a little bit better sense of the overall layout. I wanted to use as many pieces from the asset pack, and so I use those corner pieces just to give it some form around those corners, and then these broken pillar pieces. I hung on to that floor piece with the hole in it, thinking I might use it, but I don't believe I did ultimately use it, besides for those grates. So this is slightly off the map side, which can present some issues in terms of character movement. So I wanted to test that a little bit. And ultimately the character was able to move into those spots. Copying the stairs over and shaping up the other side, and I got rid of that walkway overhang. I built something that I didn't like the stairs how they had a gap in them, so I just put a little wall over there and copied it over. And I have this spot that is definitely not symmetrical, where there's maybe an entrance or exit from the prison. So this is where I'm shaping up the orcish looking fence and copying it over. Spending quite a bit of time. And then this one I turned into a door, just because I like anything that's interactive. It had a pivot issue in terms of the position of the pivot point, so I spent some time trying to resolve that with some trial and error until I got something that worked fairly well. Copying the door over this way. I don't have to do too much on the pivot since it was just done. And again, I'm just sort of filling in some spots so that way there's something interesting. Oh, this is where I'm customizing the occlusion. So setting it as an overhead tile. And I couldn't merge them all together because some things need to occlude on the left side and the right side. And so here I'm just tagging things with the to occlude when the floor occludes, and merging the fence and giving it the same tag. So hopefully testing each and every one as I go to not go absolutely crazy. And then every time I move the actor down, making sure that all the pieces have indeed occluded. I'm actually setting these grates as doors so they can be open and closed, and you could see that there was a little bit of a issue with it going through the stone wall, so I had to move them in the archway center. I do a refresh quite a bit here as I hit some snags. Refresh is the first step before I try to find some other reason it's acting up. So this is that entrance or exit point. I'm doing a little Z fighting there with the wall. Just trying to move things so I'm not getting any flickering. And this is one of my animated walls that are coming out in the March pack. And a collapsing archway as well. So I'm placing those down into this area, testing it out to make sure when it collapses, the pieces aren't going through another wall or something. I'm testing some occlusion with the actor again, making sure all the pieces look good when the actor is under the floor. This must be the other side then. So the left floor. Takes quite a bit of work to do the occlusion, but I think it looks really nice when it works well. And as many interactive elements, doors, grates, fences, collapsing objects, makes the scene really fun. Makes it so the players can explore. So I did have a little occlusion issue I didn't like here with the things occluding before the token got to the top of the stairs. And that was ultimately because the floor wasn't perfectly rectangle. So you'll see me here, I'm basically separating these elements from that part that sticks out and then the actual rectangle part of the floor. And what that will do is it changes the hitbox, and so the floor does not occlude as he's walking up the steps. Little details like that can just make the scene rise to a professional level and make it more user-friendly for players to not just have random things disappear when they shouldn't be disappearing yet. Now I'm getting into the lighting, changing the skybox to black, and I didn't like how, well, I think it's later, but I do change the fence. It's just too perfect for what I'm calling a ruined prison dungeon. Oh, and I'm changing it so it doesn't cast a shadow. I think the fence, I didn't want it to cast any shadow, even though I believe I set the lighting to be 12 noon exactly. So just adding some debris and ruined pieces. Here I'm putting some metal debris that I found that, you know, looks like it might match the fence a little bit, as if maybe something broke out of one of these prison cells, and then adding occlusion. This one isn't great because these either occlude if you're under it or if you're under the main floor. So unfortunately, if you're under that one little piece, you will have these floating elements. I suppose I could make the floating piece a source and then sort of nest sourced occlusion pieces. Adding some rocks, debris, just to give it that feel of time. Trying to find some bricks that match close enough to the textures I'm already using, and then just putting them in various places. This can all just help a scene feel more lived in, more storied. And at this point, I really like everything except that the lighting is pretty boring. So find some lighting, and here I find a old Baileywiki scene. That's what I'm searching for, is a scene with a torch, because for some reason my drop a torch function wasn't working. So I find a torch here that I like and just place it in. Then I set these torches up. Since this door is hidden, I wanted the clue to be these torches. Like, why would those torches be placed like that on a wall? Perhaps the players had that same thought. So I think keeping it to one scene, and if anyone needs to just get rid of the torches, they can just select the lights and delete them. And adding a few lights to the basement or the bottom floor. And then adding just one on the ground to, again, give it that sense of lived in feeling. Had to occlude the torches I just added. Unfortunately, occlusion of lights is not a function in 3DCanvas, so tokens may go to the bottom floor and have some floating lights above. But we make do with what we can. Just renaming the dungeon and exporting the JSON so I can upload it to the Baileywiki server. And here we go, slowed down to real time. We can see what this might look like for a player. going to go ahead and mute. So I'm testing or showing off the various animated assets. And then moving the token up the stairs, and we see that that occlusion for going up the stairs was fixed, so things don't disappear till you get there. Token opens the door. That door functions as well. And just showing the various interactable elements from the rising gate to the grate and the floor. Maybe not for players to go down that one since there's not a solid floor beneath that one, but on the other side, the floor extends properly. So game masters can choose to pretty easily fill those grates with solid floor if they want, or to keep them for prison escapes or whatever your story allows. And then there's this secret door over here that maybe they find, and with a click we see these sort of magic stones create a doorway. So that is the ruined prison dungeon. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.